Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and today I've got a special guest. I've got Todd Evans from the Contrarians, and we're going to do Rush Presto. How are you today, mate?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing, Peter?
Oh, good. It's a
Good.
beautiful, sunny, wintry day in Australia, but no, all looking forward to dissecting Rush Presto. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the album, maybe do a little bit more of a deep dive on our favourite tracks. So just setting it up, this album was the 13th album by Rush. It went gold, acquired sales in the US of 500,000, went to the UK position at number 27 in the charts. US, it went to number 16. Didn't chart at all in Australia because Rush was very much a cult band. It was produced by Rupert Hine. Rupert Hine was well known for producing acts such as Tina Turner, Howard Jones, Thompson Twins, The Fix, amongst others. So
Apparently, he made a lot of records, a lot of albums, like maybe two or three or something like that, which I've never seen.
Absolutely. So this album came after Hold Your Fire. They had a break of 6 months and then went and recorded it. So tell us, Todd, what are your views of Rush Presto?
Okay, so Presto, when it came out, I was very excited about it, and I remember that it took me absolutely no time at all to dive into it and really love it. I think Presto is one of my favorite Rush albums. I don't know if it's top five, but it's close. I like the way that it. Well, first of all, I should say that I was a little bit skeptical going into it when it came out because I definitely am a fan of the Rush album. How do I put this? The structure of there being 4 songs on side 1 and 4 songs on side 2. That's the way my favorite Rush album, Power Windows, is. That's the way Signals is. And then they moved into 5 and 5 on Hold Your Fire. And on this one, it's 11 tracks total, but there were 6 tracks on side 1 of the vinyl. Yeah. And so I was just like, oh, that seems like too many on one side. But
one side was longer than the other.
Yeah.
And they actually told their fans, turn it up on side 1.
Yeah.
And then turn it down on side 2. I have a US
copy of it, and it says that same thing. Yeah. But one of the things I like about well, here first I should probably say that when they made this record, they tried to they wanted to not be so reliant on technology. And so that was their that's what they went into it. That's the mindset that they went into it with. And so the songs, and I've heard this, and I've read it in a couple of places, but that the songs were more guitar based in that they were written that way. And to me, I still hear songs on this album that I feel like are a little more keyboard oriented. Like I feel like they might have still been written on the keyboard, maybe 1 or 2 of them. There's a lot of piano on this album. There's probably more piano on this album than any other Rush album. But I could get on my soapbox about keyboards and Rush. I always am amused that people have such a visceral reaction to keyboards and Rush when there have been so many. I mean, even from the relatively early days of A Farewell to Kings and on, that it seems like that should be people should think of keyboards and Rush as a staple and not something that should be that they should be concerned about. It's almost as if they think that Geddy's going to pull off into individual keys and start stabbing people with them. But I've never really felt like their keyboard approach was particularly heavy-handed at all. And in a lot of their songs that have a lot of keyboards in them, they really are still based. You could on Alex's riffs, even though they've got a lot of keyboards in them. And so I don't really feel on this album. I didn't know that when this album came out in 1989. And I don't feel like it's when I hear it, I don't think, oh, this is an album where they wrote with the guitars instead of writing with Geddy, writing with keyboards, because I feel like there's a lot of keyboards used for color, and I think that it doesn't. As somebody who likes the use of keyboards and synthesizers in Rush, I was happy with it. I didn't feel like, oh, they're backing away from something that I really like. That came later, where I felt like they took an important tool out of their toolbox. I've never been quite sure that they really should have done that. But this album, I think, has a really great sound to it. I've heard it be I've heard it criticized for not people saying, well, you can't hear the drums. And I think that that's really overstating that. The drums have a different sound to them. And if you're familiar with Rupert Hyden's productions, they all are kind of like this. They have a very bright sound to them. And so they're not the bottom end of the drums is not as prominent. But that doesn't mean that you can't hear them. And I personally think on Presto, the drums are really loud. I mean, there are a couple of songs where they seem to be quite cranked up in the mix. Anagram comes to mind, and Available Light too. And so I think overall the song moves along at a really good place. It's got some really touching moments, like the past and Available Light, and it's also got some humor in it. I think that there's some new humor in Chain Lightning and Superconductor, and so I have really strong positive feelings about Presto. It's always been a favorite.
Yeah, look, I think it's moved up in my viewing. I think it's one of my favourite Rush albums. My entry point to Rush, being in Australia, we didn't have exposure to Rush at all. They were unknown, very much a cult band. I bought a cassette of Grace Under Pressure, and I got into them through that entry point, which was very synth, a lot of that Police influence, maybe a little bit of early Simple Minds. And I basically explored both directions, went back in the catalogue and then followed them as they went through. And I enjoyed the 80s completely, and I enjoyed going into the 70s, and especially when they were sort of very much without synths and a power rock trio. But this album, when it came out, was a breath of fresh air. And to me, it signifies it's a transitional album and it's an end of an era. When Rupert Hine took on the role of producer, he said that Rush are one of the great power rock trios in the world. And I wanted my production to really go pow and emphasize the musicianship and that sort of synergy between the three. Because when you've only got three in a band, they're super tight. They know each other's moves. You just, a knowing glance on stage, you know which way it's the direction if you've been playing for a considerable period of time. And I'll reference the first song. And the first song I really enjoy is Show, Don't Tell. So when it starts off, you hear the tribal drums and you're going, oh no, are they going in Tai Shan territory here? Is this... I think it's a little bit of humor. I think it's, you put the needle on the record and all those fans going, oh no, they're doing that Tai Shan, they're doing that sort of, and then it suddenly goes into that funk workout with the quick drums and the bass, and you go, Rush are back. They're in the pocket and they're doing that funk workout, and it just goes pow, and it's got that real great interplay of all the instruments. So I love it.
I think that first song is a really good example of of what Rupert Hine was saying about I want to present Rush as a really tight band. I think Show Don't Tell does that perfectly.
Absolutely. It's just so well arranged. And the criticism that's been directed at Rush over the years is they over-arrange songs, but I love it. I love how it goes in different directions. To my palate, I like musical curiosity. I mean, I love punk rock, I love indie rock and all that, but if I want to listen to a band like Rush, I want curiosity. And I think they're musically adventurous and curiosity. And if they've got a blank canvas, they're going to use the whole bloody blank canvas and just paint their pictures. I think it's wonderful. One thing I like about this album is lyrically, I think it's some of Neal Peart's most personal lyrics. He's one of the great humanists. His lyrics have always been, when it talks about matters of the heart and matters of the human nature, very personal and observational. And his lyrics in this album are really fine. I think it's some of his finest writing. And what happens is that you've got the band, they're just doing their thing, they're doing the instrumentation, and he doesn't get involved. And he's just writing all these lyrics, and he goes in and he presents it. And the way that these guys have been able to operate, you know, under those circumstances for such a long time, that's just a major credo to them. But I love the little key changes at the end of that song. And, you know, you've got the keyboard wash, and you made a really good point. I think the keyboards are used very complementary, and it builds and it makes it very atmospheric. I don't think it's overbearing. This is a guitar album, don't get me wrong, but the keyboards, and I'm talking not about synth, I'm talking about piano, which I understand is being played by Rupert Hines, really sort of reinforces and just makes the melodies so uplifting.
Yeah, I think the keyboards, and it Show Don't Tell is a perfect example. I think the keyboards in that song make the song kind of sparkle.
Yes.
In a way that it wouldn't if they weren't there.
Absolutely.
And they're not in the way.
No.
So
no.
And there's still space in that song.
Yeah. So when you have something like Power Windows, where they were sort of really obsessed with the technology, and the technology was driving it, and I like that. And also Hold Your Fire. This one was where the guitars and it was more organic. They were going back to being a rock trio, but the keyboards and the synth and all the instrumentation below is more supporting it, not dominating it. And I think that's really fine. And that comes out really well in the key changes and the different twists and turns in.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because all of that talk about having there be them, you know, I've seen them talk about this, having a different approach to this album and the albums that came after it. But at the same time, in a song like Available Light, if you listen to Alex's part, it's almost one of the very same sounds that he was using on Hold Your Fire. It's very processed, kind of arpeggiated guitar thing that's happening. And so I think he was still, I think that the things that he was doing prior to this album, I think he was into that. I think he carried some of those same sounds over into this new approach. And so I don't think it was ever a matter of, oh, Alex was really unhappy and now all of a sudden he can shine. I've never been under the impression that he felt that way.
Yeah. His guitar playing and the tone on it is delightful on this album. And there's a certain tonality to his guitar playing that reminds me of Charlie Burchill of Simple Minds.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can hear that. Yeah.
Some of the Simple Minds, Once Upon a Time era and maybe a little bit before, and, you know, going through their catalog, but definitely that he's got that tonality that would just, I was thinking, that sounds like Charlie Burchill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can hear that too.
Yeah. Have you got another song that you want to highlight?
I have always we talked about Available Light, so I'll talk about that one right now since I already mentioned it. One of the things that I love about that song is that I took to it immediately as a photographer, because Available Light is a photography theme. Yes. And in current day photography, where the thing that you carry around every day in your pocket can take pictures in just about any light, the term available light doesn't really mean as much as it used to. But what it used to mean was that you would take photographs in a indoor setting, and you didn't have any artificial light to you weren't using a flash or it wasn't daylight. And so the phrase available light meant, oh, well, I took these photos available light. I just had to, I had to use a tripod, or I had to open the lens all the way up or whatever to make it work. And with the light I had. And so there's a really great lyric in this one where and it's good for a couple of reasons. He says, play of light, a photograph, the way I used to be, some forgotten stranger, doesn't mean that much to me. Trick of light, moving picture, moments caught in flight, make the shadows darker or the colors shine too bright, which is something that somebody might do in post-production, try to make the shadows darker or lighter. And so I really like that. It's not, the song is called Available Light, and it's not about photography, but it's just got a very subtle way of kind of weaving that in. And I think that Available Light is Geddy Lee's finest vocal performance. And I think that it represents a peak. I think maybe that was as good as he got. And not that he didn't have fine performances after that, but Available Light seems to me to be the peak. Like, I think that is the he's got perfect pitch, and he's got high notes and he nails them, and the pitch is perfect. And then of course in Available Light, like I was talking about how the drums sound, they're so the snare sound is so defined, and it's so bright and crisp. And there's that one fill towards the end of it, and I know you know which one I'm talking about, the triplets. And it's presented with so much, it's played with so much precision that I think that part of that song is just dazzling. I mean, you expect good drum performances from Neal Peart, but that one in particular, I really absolutely love. So yeah, Available Light for sure. I think it's probably one of the best album closers that they ever did. And it sneaks up on you. People don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And you've just reminded me, I wanted to talk about Geddy Lee's vocals on this album. I think this album presents Geddy Lee's vocals in the best light out of the whole catalogue. I think Rupert Hine was able to actually just get his vocals in the right spot in the mix, and I think he just sang beautifully across this album. And Available Light is definitely one of his finest vocal performances. That song is very relevant today. I think it talks about how the media are people that are looking through the media, and it's all about capturing memories. It's not living in the present. And I think it's very relevant to social media and everything in today's society. And with Neal's lyrics, a lot of his lyrics that he wrote, 20, 30 years ago, a lot of it, is just as relevant today as it was then. Another thing I like about that song is that great bubbling bass line of Geddy Lee. I love how Rupert Hine's production really brings it up, and it's like a lead guitar. So his bass is so up in the mix, but it's not overbearing. It's sort of like at a counterpoint with Alex's guitar, but it's wonderful in that particular song. No, I think that's a great, and also the nice little organ fills. That's another example of the organ fills in that song that just make it so atmospheric. No, that is
and also not making it seem like it's overbearing. It's not it's not over the top. It's very tastefully done.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really good choice. My next song I want to highlight off this album is Chain Lightning. Respond, vibrate, feedback, resonate. I love the lyrics. It's basically Neal is basically saying bitterness and ignorance and hatred can spread around amongst the world like lightning. And I love that sort of allegory, how he's sort of using the description of lightning. I think the thing that sparked this lyric was that he was watching a lightning storm with his daughter. And I think that's a really nice touch. And it sort of sparked an idea. And out of that, he just created this song, just talking about how, hatred and bitterness can just spread amongst the world like wild lightning. It's got a wild Alex solo in this, Todd. I really, really like it. I think it's another outstanding song on this album, and the production is, you just hear the space between the instrumentation. I think it's a mighty fine song.
It was my first favorite song on this album when the album was new. It was my first favorite. It was the first one that I looked at as my favorite, and it's still a favorite to this day. And like you were saying, the lyrics are I mean, there's some really there's this is one: hope is epidemic, optimism spreads. The moment may be brief, but it can be so bright. I think that's just really, I flip flop the order of that, but that's just really well done.
Yeah, he was a
great song.
They called him the professor, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just such a deep, forward-thinking lyricist, and I think a lot of the critics just throwing pot shots about a lot of the sci-fi tendencies of the earlier albums, and just sort of gloss over that how great a lyricist he was, looking at the human condition and how people interact with each other. And this is just a prime example. I think once you hit Permanent Waves, I think from then on, I can't think of a Neal Peart lyric that isn't good, that I don't love. I mean, I just think that Permanent Wave, not that there aren't good ones before that, but Permanent Waves is where it really starts, and that album ends with Natural Science. And it's like, that's when it really gets good and stays good. Maybe the Rap and Roll to Bones. Not telling anyone.
Oh, I like that.
I do
like
too.
That. I guess we should save that for another episode.
Yeah. That's a showstopper in the concert, because every time I see the concert and seeing them live, and they do the rap, and you have some of their favorite stars and personalities doing the rap, that's a highlight. People just go gaga.
Yeah, and people still act like they don't like it, but then when it used to happen in the shows, everybody was just all into it. So
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So have you got a couple?
I do, yeah. I wanted to talk about Anagram for Mongo. That's kind of a silly song, and it's just basically based on anagrams. Some of them are complete anagrams. Most of them are partials. Like, it's like two words, and then they use some of the words but in the other word that they put next to it. But the thing I like so much about that song is the melody. I think that's a really beautiful song. I mean, it gives you the feeling that it's supposed to be fun, but melodically, I always have thought that was one of their best melodies in that song. And I love the piano in it. I love that there's there's piano, and then there's synths as well, but there's also space in it. And it's just one of those things. I didn't notice it it never really stood out to me until, years later. And I thought, and I've kind of rediscovered it. And so I really appreciate that song.
Yeah. And I agree, that's well critiqued. And I'm just sort of thinking that what you said earlier, that a lot of these songs were written on the piano, and you're thinking that maybe they could be stripped down and just been with like the piano with minimal sort of instrumentation. But that is a really, really good song on this album. One of my ones is another one of the most personal songs for Neal, and that's The Pass. And it raises the topic of juvenile suicide. I think it's got some wonderful lyrics in it. Some of the lyrics are, all of us get lost in the darkness, dreamers learn to steer by the stars. And it's basically Neal sort of counteracting the romanticism of teenage suicide, and saying it's not really as romantic as it should. It tends to be made through the media or through Hollywood or whatever. I think again, you've got the Alex doing the Charlie Burchill guitar tone, and the keyboards are just providing a great wash, some great atmosphere. I think it's one of his greatest lyrics, and it's so personal. And for him to do something that is potentially a really difficult topic and make it, intelligent, thought-provoking, and interesting at the same time. I think it's a joy to behold.
Yeah, and I guess this was the lyric on the album that he spent the most time on, and that as the years went by, he reflected on it and thought of it as one of his favorites. And I agree. And one of the things I also like about the song is that musically it's simple, and I think that makes it more effective.
Yes,
I just the simplicity of it. You think about it. I always think about the two albums that came before it, and I think about what my favorite tracks are, and they're all just insanely amazing as far as the arrangements are. You think of something like Marathon or Mission or Prime Mover, and you think, but then you have this song, and this song is probably on this album the one that compares the most with those, but it's, as far as being really touching and having a really great lyric and being really inspiring, but this one's simple. Yep. This one is stripped down a little bit, but you don't feel like you're listening to a stripped down version of Rush. Yeah. It was pulled off so well that it doesn't feel like, oh, well, yeah, it's a Rush song, but there's not a whole lot happening in it. That's not like something that comes to your mind. It doesn't make you think, oh, well, it's not as good because there's not as much happening in it. It's good because there's not as much happening in it.
Do you think they did simple arrangements not to detract, because they knew that it was a very personal, heartfelt and important song for this album? Do you think that there was deliberate move to simplify the arrangements so it doesn't detract from the lyrics and that message gets out?
I think there probably was. And I don't want to make too much of it. I don't want to make it sound like I'm demeaning it, because it doesn't. It's simple. Absolutely. But I think I think they probably did. I think they probably did. I think they thought, well, we don't want too much competing with this lyric.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. No, that's nice. I like Superconductor. So I
do too.
It's a tongue-in-cheek lyric.
I do too. I like it a lot, and it's funny. I just read recently that it's supposed to be about pop music being superficial, and like pop stars and stuff like that, not having a lot of depth to them. And I never really thought of it that way. I'm not sure what I thought it was about. Yeah. But it's come to my attention that there are people that just hanging around on like Twitter and stuff like that there are people who don't like that song, and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's not to like about Superconductor, but
the haters are always going to hate. But
right.
I think it was a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek reference to the synth pop years. Sort of just a little bit of a sort of a reference to that. I think it's about being consumed by technology and music, maybe needing to look at getting back to being organic, how rock and roll was. But I think it encapsulates all of the above. But definitely there's a lot of, a little bit of tongue in cheek. There's a lot of energy in the song. It sort of moves along. So the song's called Superconductor. It's not going to be a dirge, and it just moves along. And his drumming has really got a groove, and it's in the pocket, and it's just moving it along. And I think it's a really, it's a great track on the album.
One of my favorite things about it is the key change. And it's funny because it doesn't need a key change, but it has one anyway. And it's really effective because I can remember hearing it for the first time and not expecting one and thinking, the key changed. That's cool.
And then it has that little whimsical organ bit, Superconductor.
Yeah.
And then it's a key change that you're not expecting. And that's the thing that I love about Rush, Todd. I love in the 80s where they were exploring these left field key changes. So you're listening to a song, you think it's going in this direction, and then it goes in that direction.
Yeah.
And it takes you and you go, I didn't expect that. And this album's got lots of those sort of unexpected key changes. And that's what I love about this band. It's all about musical curiosity.
Yeah. And a couple of things I want to say about that. It influenced me later on to discover bands, and some bands that I like there's a metal band from I mean, they're practically a pop band. Their songs are so melodic, but there's a metal band from Finland called Amorphous, and they do key changes, and they do them in almost every song, and they're really unexpected. And sometimes instead of the key going up and sounding like it's moving into the key changes, but it sort of lifts, kind of like at the end of Marathon by Rush. Yeah. Their key changes will go down. Yeah. And so listening to Rush makes me really appreciate that, because when I hear another band do something really creative with a key change, I'm like, I like this kind of stuff.
Todd, I reckon there's a show idea, like bands who do sudden key changes, because I was just thinking of when we did the Radiohead chat with Grant, and about Radiohead when they do these key changes, but it sort of makes you feel more melancholy. It sort of goes like that, and then
and that's one of the greatest things in Radiohead's bag of tricks, is how they can do that. But yeah, it's I like Superconductor a lot, and I love the orchestration in it, like the synth orchestration in it. I think it's just perfect. I think it's an example of a song where it would lose a lot if you took that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one that I was going to bring is Presto, and the title song, and it's folky. And I like that. And, everyone would like to go back and fix mistakes, but they can't. I like the whole concept.
Yeah. And that was a big deal, because I remember hearing that and thinking, this is the first time we've heard an acoustic guitar for a very long time. And, I could be wrong about that, but for whatever reason, in 1989, when I heard Presto, I thought, oh, there's an acoustic guitar. It's been a while since they've done that.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody in the comments will say, oh, they've done it here and here and here. And maybe I just don't remember, but
yeah,
I feel like that was something novel.
Did that song get played a lot?
Not really.
No,
not really. I have it figures I can't remember exactly when this was. Oh, I think I do know when it was. Presto was never played live by Rush until the Time Machine tour, I believe.
Right. Yes.
But the singles on this album were "Show Don't Tell," "The Pass," and "Superconductor."
Yes.
And I don't think there's a video for Superconductor, but I'm not totally sure.
I remember the show "Show Me, Don't Tell Me." It was sort of like in black and white.
And there's a video for "The Pass."
Yeah. Right. Hey, what do you think of this album cover? Isn't it great?
I love it. Yeah, there's I read something today about when they kind of verbalized the concept that they wanted for this album to Hugh Sim and the artist, and he came up with a bunch. He came up with a couple of different examples, and when they saw this one, they all laughed.
Yeah,
and he said, "What? Don't you like it?" And they were like, "No, it's perfect. It's exactly what we wanted."
Yeah, well,
so I love it.
I think it's one of their finest album covers. It's all. Look, I haven't researched this part of it, but it's sort of like Hypnosis. Maybe, I'm not sure. It's in that wheelhouse.
I think it has a Hypnosis feel.
Yeah,
it was done by Hugh Sim, who did a lot of their album covers, but it has a big Hypnosis feel to me. And people like it. People who don't like Rush like it. I mean, people who aren't necessarily fans of Rush, like I got the vinyl of this recently, and when it came in the mail, my wife saw it and she said, "Oh, the one with the bunnies." So I think it's hard not to like it.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something really quick about the song "Scars."
Yes.
What do the kids say? I was today years old when I found this out, but I was today years old when I found out that that's a sequencer and not electric bass that's playing that pattern in Scars.
Wow. Okay. Did they play that live?
I don't think they ever did.
Yeah. Did you see the Presto tour?
I did, yes.
Any recollections?
I remember there being two, either one or two. I thought there was two, one on each side, inflatable bunnies at some point.
Wow. They've always got that humor on stage, haven't they?
Yeah, they do. And the cool thing about the tours that came after Grace Under Pressure and Moving Pictures is that there were a lot of video presentations that were part of the show. That a lot of in some cases, like for A Distant Early Warning comes to mind, and for Marathon, the music videos are actually like played in the back and sort of background and incorporated into the presentation live.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things about Presto and Roll the Bones is that all of that stuff was recent enough so that you could see them do it again. You know, like when they played Distant Early Warning on the subsequent tours, they still showed the video. So it was kind of like, oh, it was cool when they showed that video, and then they play the song. And it's like, oh, they're showing it again. Great. So that's one of the things I remember about Presto, is just being delighted that when they repeated songs from earlier tours, that some of the same visual elements were still there.
Yeah. Did this material get warmly received live? I know I'm going back in time a long time, but
I think so. Yeah. I remember Show Don't Tell, when it came out, as far as being played on the radio, being really well received. I can remember hearing people say, you know, wow, that almost sounds like early Rush, because it's so direct. But as far as in concert, I think so. I know they played The Pass. I know they played Show Don't Tell. I know they played Superconductor. But, you know, I've seen Rush, I think 9 times, and some of the shows blur together. Yeah, I occasionally appear on the Rush fans channel, and it's amazing to me how some of those guys can remember specific things about the tours, because to me, I get that wrong. Like if I try to remember what tour a certain thing happened, I can't always figure out which year it was. So I think the more you see a band, the more that happens.
Yes.
Whereas if you've just seen somebody once or twice, it's easier to recollect, you know, what they did when.
When you were, I'm asking all these questions because we in Australia never saw Rush, and you know, and
I'm so sorry.
Anyway, sorry, this is not a Dr. Phil episode. Okay, I'll get off the couch. But were the crowds consistent? You know, every concert you went to was a full house, or did they have like a dip in popularity and rose up?
I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that. I saw them pretty much. My first Rush show was Permanent Waves, and then I missed Moving Pictures because I think I had I was in band, and so there was probably like a football game that night or something. And I saw every tour up until Counterparts, and then I didn't see him again until 2011. But as far as during that whole run, I didn't feel like there was ever a slip. You know what I mean? It was like they played in Atlanta. They always played at the Omni, and which isn't there anymore. But I don't know what that held. I don't know, 14,000, something like that. It always seemed like it was full. It never felt like, oh, there's nobody here. I remember seeing the Cars on the Door to Door tour, and it being like 30% occupied and 70%
I heard that was a big flop.
Yeah, never. And it was a really cool show too. That's a subject for another topic for a different show.
Would they bring the curtain up for that, or just you just see it all? Because in Australia, if a show doesn't sell and they still have to put it up, they put the curtain and just give a perception that it's like more full than the actual venue.
Yeah, they would call it switching from full house to half house.
Yep.
And so I've seen that happen before with a couple of bands. It happened for Yes in 2004, which was an amazing Yes tour. I mean, with Rick Wakeman and the Core 5, but for whatever reason, it didn't sell that well, and they put the curtain up and pushed everything.
Yeah, absolutely. But Rush consistently full house.
Rush, I never saw that happen to Rush. No.
Yeah. Did they only do one night? Or would they have a fan base they could do like 2 or,
Only one night. So I think that was just right in the pocket. I think the venues that they came and played at were pretty much, because like, for example, in Atlanta, Genesis would do 2 nights. Like they did one night in 84. And then when they came back in 87, I think it was, then it was 2 nights.
Right.
So it was like, so it would be, something some bands did, but Rush seemed to be super consistent. They seemed to fill up a 14,000 seater pretty much every time.
Absolutely. And was the audience cross-generational? Did you see a lot of younger people, older people? I know I'm going into the memory bank a bit here, but I'm just interested as an outsider.
No, it's a really good question, because there are times when that happened. But no, for Rush, it didn't seem like it at the time. I think Rush in the 2000s, it was multi-generational. But back then, it seemed to be everybody between the ages of 14 and 40. Now, I could be wrong. Somebody else might tell you something different. But like, for example, I can remember going to see Pink Floyd or Roger Waters or somebody like that and thinking, there's a lot of old people here, older people here. It was something that I would say when I was a kid. I would never say something so insensitive now, but yeah, I can remember being a kid and thinking, there's like hippies here, because it seemed like there were people who were teenagers in the 60s going to see it now. But for Rush, I never really felt that.
Right.
I never really felt like there were people that Rush was their favorite band in 1974, and now they're there. It seemed like it was very much the core fans from that middle period, from that.
Right. Do you think the MTV era opened it up to, more to people outside the, the diehard Rush? Do you think there was a curiosity from people that would go to a Rush concert that normally wouldn't go to a Rush concert?
I think it probably helped a little bit. Rush was never really enthusiastic about doing videos. I read a quote from Alex Lifeson that said, they're all pretty much rubbish, and ours are no exception. But you're just kind of self-deprecating. But yeah, I think it probably did. But I was, when I went to see Permanent Waves, couldn't drive. I was 15. So mom had to drop us off.
Absolutely. Well, any other sort of recollections on this album, or any other thoughts that you'd like to share? I think it's a mighty fine album. I think it's really up there, and I've been listening to it for the last couple of weeks, and it's certainly gone up in my estimation. I love it.
I think it's really interesting. I think Martin Popoff has said this before, and I think it's definitely true for Rush, that their albums sort of come in pairs, and there's Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures are kind of a pair, and Signals and Grace Under Pressure are kind of a pair, and Presto and Roll the Bones are kind of a pair because they're Rupert Hine produced. They've got the same sound carries over from one to the other, and so yeah, I like this era. I like the Presto Roll the Bones era quite a bit, because I think that it bridged a gap between my favorite era, which is Power Windows Hold Your Fire, another pair, and super technology. Yep. And then moving into these, it was like, when I heard Presto, I wasn't disappointed, because I liked, the two albums that came before it so much. I was like, this is a different approach, but I still really like it. Now, when Counterparts came out, I wasn't so sure. And Counterparts has turned out to be one of my favorite Rush albums, but at the time I wasn't so sure. I was like, it feels like something's missing. And then when Roll the Bones came out, then I was disappointed, because I felt like, okay, I remember I had a friend, my friend Kevin, who was a keyboardist, and I remember him saying, somebody asking him what he thought about Roll the Bones, and he said, well, you remember when Rush songs used to have cool parts? Well, there's no more cool parts. And that's a harsh criticism, but that's kind of how I felt about Roll the Bones when it came out. Okay, now they just stripped the keyboards out on purpose, and it sounds like they're missing, and there's not a lot to pull me into these songs. Now I like those albums. I like Counterparts. I like Roll the Bones, because I'm all grown up and I'm not expecting Rush. I don't feel entitled for Rush to give me certain things that I want. And so I've been encouraged to reassess those albums, and now I like them. Now I can see why they're good, and I understand why they did it that way. But as far as Presto is concerned, I thought it was really interesting because they did make an attempt to strip it down a little bit. And that was 1989. I was full on, liking things that were I was listening to prog bands. And so I wanted it all. I wanted synthesizers and mellotrons and choirs and just stack it all up. And so, but Presto didn't disappoint me. I thought there was plenty interesting going on in it.
Yeah, I think the word that I would describe in this album is balance. It's just a good balance between technology and going back to be what they were, one of the finest organic power trios in rock history.
I think so too. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I was going to say that I think that Rupert Hine makes good records. I think he's a good producer.
He does.
I like the Saga records that he produced. I like there's a Suzanne Vega record that he produced that I like very much. I like Howard Jones' Dream into Action is one of my all-time favorite albums.
Stevie Nicks.
And he did. Yeah. I forgot about that.
The Fix.
So I think.
Yep. So no, I think his production of this album is sublime. So I think that's all about great artists, Todd. Some of their albums, it's about aging. And this album hasn't aged one iota to me. And in fact, it's improved. Maybe the haircuts and the fashion have aged in the videos, but I don't think the music.
I actually am quite fond of haircut era Rush. I like the less meat and potatoes rock and roll look and more cosmopolitan look that they went into. I'm a fan of that.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for that, Todd. We're going to do this again.
Sure.
That was really enjoyable. I really like doing a bit of a deep dive. So viewers, please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Tell us your views. What are your favorite tracks on this album? Do you like this album, or are we just talking, I don't know, rubbish? I don't think we are. I think we're talking some sense. This is a great album, and do yourself a favor and check it out. All right. Catch you later.